we're keeping up the debuff on the target. What does this remind you of? What does this remind you guys of? Is there a certain, maybe, Covenant ability that it's reminiscent of? If you think back to like a red ability, a red debuff you would keep on the target. I don't know. Is it ringing any bells? What's up, guys? My name is Jedith, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about Aldrachi Reaver. Yes, again, I know, we've had so many videos talking about this hero talent tree. This is a super important one because this hero talent tree is kind of in a very pivotal spot and a pivotal moment in the tuning and balancing cycle where we need to get all eyes on this thing, because if things stay the way that they are with this build, Havoc Demon Hunter is not going to be in a good spot. So first, I just want to give a refresher on how this hero talent tree works in the first place. It revolves around picking up soul fragments. You need to pick up 6 of them, and that allows you to cast this ability called Reaver's Glaive. This is an ability that replaces Throw Glaive on your bar. It's free to cast, does not use a GCD, does a ton of damage, and then after you cast it, you have basically a pattern of abilities that you can do one way to get a certain effect, or do it another way to get a different effect. So you can see at the bottom of the tooltip there says the enhanced ability you cast first deals 10% increased damage, and the second one deals 20% increased damage. Okay. Great, so if we look at Reaver's Mark, this says, when enhanced by Reaver's Glaive, Chaos Strike applies Reaver's Mark, which causes the target to take 15% increased damage for 20 seconds. If cast after Blade Dance, Reaver's Mark is increased to 30%. So you cast Reaver's Glaive, and you cast Blade Dance into Chaos Strike, that puts a debuff on the mob, making them take 30% increased damage. If you cast Reaver's Glaive, Chaos Strike into Blade Dance, that first Chaos Strike is going to still apply Reaver's Mark, but it will only be for 15%. Now, this one, Fury of the Aldrachi. When enhanced by Reaver's Glaive, Blade Dance casts 3 additional glaive slashes to nearby targets. If cast after Chaos Strike, cast 6 slashes instead of 3. So these 3 slashes, or 6, are not actually extra slashes of Blade Dance. They're a different damage event called Art of the Glaive. They are not modified by any Blade Dance or Death Sweep modifying talents. They're completely separate, but the good thing about these is that they are completely uncapped. So you can see why you might be incentivized to press this, to do it this way in a large AoE pull or in Mythic Plus or something, and you might be incentivized to do the Reaver's Mark path in single target, or if you're looking for prio damage. There's also this one called Aldrachi Tactics, and this talent essentially makes the second ability, the second enhanced ability in your pattern after you press Reaver's Glaive, to always give you a soul fragment. This is super important because this allows you to keep the Reaver's Glaive train going, for lack of a better term. Then you have Wounded Quarry. So whenever you have your Reaver's Mark on a target, your melee attacks strike for additional damage, and they have a chance to shatter a soul fragment. So again, this is crucial to making sure you're just keeping the train going and getting as many soul fragments as possible to get Reaver's Glaive back, so you can just keep the cycle flowing. Now, one of the new changes that they've made in one of the more recent beta builds is Incisive Blade. So this talent now just gives your Chaos Strike a 30% increased damage all the time. All the time. Not just inside of Reaver's Glaive, all the time, which is incredibly powerful and part of the reason why this is kind of broken, but we'll get there in a second. Okay, and finally, we have the capstone talent, Thrill of the Fight. So after consuming both enhancements, so that's Chaos Strike and Blade Dance, gain a Thrill of the Fight, increasing your attack speed by 15% for 20 seconds, and your damage and healing by 30% for 10 seconds. Okay, so that's just the basic rundown of the tree. I'll just show you quickly what it looks like to kind of do this. We'll use Sigil of Spite, previously known as Elysian Decree. We'll use Sigil of Flame, so we're at 5 soul fragments. We're going to Chaos Strike to get 1 more. There it is. Okay, so now you can see my Throw Glaive turned into Reaver's Glaive. We're going to press that. And now we have our pattern to fulfill, right? We have these buffs. So we're going to do Blade Dance first. And then we're going to end it with Chaos Strike. And that put a debuff on this target dummy. So this target dummy now takes 30% increased damage for 20 seconds. We're now down to 10 seconds. So this is a buff that you kind of want to maintain on the target if you're doing like a single target or prio thing. Now, of course, there's more complexity with this because you'll be weaving it in with potentially Essence Break. Maybe you're playing Inertia, so you're fell rushing, you're back flipping, you're eye beaming, you're doing all these other things that you kind of have to mix in with all of that to stack all the damage buffs and get the damage that you should be getting. Now, one of the undocumented changes that was taken out of the tree, this used to be a feature of the tree, but now they've removed it, and I'm not sure, it's just like baseline now. But if you press the hunt, this gives you Reaver's Glaive instantly. So this helps with our opener. In the previous beta builds, we weren't able to get up to 6 Lesser Soul Fragments immediately in our opener to be able to use Reaver's Glaive. We just couldn't get enough, right? We could use Sigil of Spite and Sigil of Flame combined with the Soul Sigil's talent. That would give us 5 Soul Fragments, like you can see here, and that wasn't enough to do our opener. So they made the change where the hunt will just give you a Reaver's Glaive charge right away, which is a very nice change. Hey, while I have you guys here, you may have noticed the little thing on top of my camera right over here. The MMO Awards. I've been nominated for Content Creator of the Year, and I need your help. If I can get enough votes before Friday, I'll then move on to the finals at the end of August, where I can then hopefully win the ultimate prize of the title, Content Creator of the Year. So yeah, I could use your help if you appreciate what I do. If you're looking to support me, it's free to vote. You just go to the website MMO Awards. I'll put a link down in the description, maybe in a pinned comment. Come to the website, you log in with your Gmail account just to verify that you're a human and not a robot. Then you just find Content Creator of the Year, put my name in. Make sure you type Jedith and not Jedith, and definitely not Judith. I gave you guys ideas now, didn't I? Shit. Just type in Jedith and then click vote. Job done. Thanks, guys. Let's get back to the video. Okay, so now we're going to talk about some of the functional problems with this entire tree. So first of all, because we are so dependent on getting these Lesser Soul Fragments to make sure that we can use Reaver's Glaive, we're kind of forced into using things like Sigil of Spite, which generates 3 Soul Fragments baseline. If you take Soul Sigils, that goes up to 4. And we are forced into using Sigil of Flame, both of those rotationally, just to sort of keep up with our Soul Fragments. Now, one problem that I've noticed just playing on the beta a bit and trying to do some Mythic Plus is that these 2 sigils will drop the Soul Fragments wherever your character is when the sigil explodes. So for example, if I go and I drop Sigil of Spite up at these target dummies, and I start running towards the dummies, the Soul Fragments are going to spawn behind me because that's where my character was when it exploded. See if I can do this for you. So I'm going to put Sigil of Spite down, and I'm going to run. And you can see I ended up picking up one of those fragments in my travels there, but yeah, the 2 were back there. So that could be a problem if you're playing that way in Mythic Plus. Maybe you're trying to like pre-place a sigil as you run in, like that, right? And then you like fell rush. You're going to leave a fragment behind. It's kind of odd. It's an awkward thing to have to keep in the back of your head. And the problem, I think, ultimately is that Havoc just doesn't have any abilities to scoop up the soul fragments around you like Vengeance does. So a lot of times there will just be a fragment like out of nowhere or behind you or tucked behind something somewhere, and you have no idea that it's there. By the time you do see that it's there, you have to move to it. It's just a real hassle. Now, another problem is that Reaver's Glaive now works with the Throw Glaive talents, which, hold on, it's not a problem. I mean, it's great. It's what we were asking for. I think I mentioned it in previous videos. I was like, why doesn't it work with the Throw Glaive talents? It replaces Throw Glaive on your action bars. So yeah, it is good. It's good that it works. It actually results in like a ton of Soul Scar damage if you take that talent, just purely by the fact that Reaver's Glaive does a ton of damage. It does almost 4 times the amount of what the regular Throw Glaive does. So Reaver's Glaive is working with bouncing glaives, so it makes it bounce to another target. It works with Accelerated Blade, meaning the first target that it hits, it does extra damage, and then it's reduced by 30% for each previous enemy hit. It does not work with Furious Throws, so it doesn't cost Fury to throw it. It doesn't throw a second Reaver's Glaive, but it does work with Soul Scar. This makes Soul Scar do actually a lot of damage. Reaver's Glaive really pumps up the damage that Soul Scar can do. But now there's still one underlying issue that I really wish they would fix or address. I gave them the solution in a previous video, and that is that it feels really bad to be pressing any button that's not Chaos Strike with this build. Chaos Strike is what gives you soul fragments. With the passive Demonic Appetite, pressing Chaos Strike has a chance to shatter a lesser soul fragment from your target. So you really want to be like leaning into Chaos Strike to make sure that you're spawning as many soul fragments as you can, So you're getting Reaver's Glaive available, so you can just keep it going. If you're spending GCDs on Throw Glaive, you're not pressing Chaos Strike. If you've taken Furious Throws, you're spending Fury on Throw Glaive, you're spending GCDs. It's just strange, right? Because if you've taken the Throw Glaive talents, you would think, okay, I'm going to press Throw Glaive rotationally. As often as it's up, I'm going to press it. And that alone is a kind of a problem because some people don't really like that. They don't like that playstyle. A lot of people have probably become very used to Blade Dance throwing them for them. Right now, we play a Throw Glaive build on retail and Dragonflight, but we don't really press Throw Glaive. It's not even something we really think about because Blade Dance is just doing it for us via our tier bonus. But now with this, we are using Fury and GCDs on Throw Glaive, and that means less GCDs on Chaos Strike. And like I said, Chaos Strike is what we need to be pressing to generate soul fragments to be able to use Reaver's Glaive. Even though it may technically be more damage to do that, it feels counterintuitive. And because you're wanting to get your 2 charges of Throw Glaive on cooldown, so you can go back to pressing Chaos Strike, you'll be spamming Throw Glaive, which might result in you accidentally using Reaver's Glaive when you don't want to, because they share the same button. And you'll see why that's a problem in a second. Okay, so now this is where the main problem of Aldrachi Reaver comes into play. There are a lot of different, separate, stacking damage amplification buffs or debuffs in this tree. So first of all, we just have a constant 30% increase to Chaos Strike all the time. That's pretty impactful. That's insane. Then we have 30% from Reaver's Mark if you finish your pattern with Chaos Strike, and that lasts for 20 seconds. Then we have 30% from Thrill of the Fight. Now, Thrill of the Fight used to be just an increase, a damage increase, I think it still was 30%, to the next ability used, or the next damage done. That was a problem because it would get eaten up by pressing meta. So in our opener, we'd get this buff, and then we'd press meta, and because meta actually does damage to mobs around you, a very little amount, mind you, but it does damage, that would be consumed by that buff. So they've now changed it, and it does 30% increased damage and healing for 10 seconds. This 10 seconds overlaps with the 20 seconds of Reaver's Mark, meaning you're getting 30 plus 30. So that's 60% increased damage to all of your abilities, all of your damage, everything, 60%. And let's not forget that when used directly after Reaver's Glaive, the first ability is buffed by 10%, and the second ability is buffed by 20%. So all of these stacking damage amplifiers on top of stuff we already have in the spec tree results in seriously broken damage when actually played properly. And that's the thing. When played properly, it'll be incredibly clear between players who are keeping up their Reaver's Mark buff and like capitalizing on the overlapping 30 plus 30% damage windows. So to give some perspective, a good Havoc player using Aldrachi Reaver right now is able to keep up with some of the other classes on beta whose talents are bugged, just allowing them to do, frankly, unrealistic damage. We're talking about like Arcane Mages and Unholy DKs. Now keep in mind, our tree isn't bugged. Our tree does exactly what it says in the tooltips, and that's the problem. Why is it a problem? Because whenever a class is gapping all other classes on the meters, that usually means they're going to get heavily nerfed. So, okay, they're going to nerf Havoc. How do they do that? If they nerf the spec abilities on their own, that's also going to affect the performance of Felsguard. And Felsguard is already severely behind Aldrachi Reaver when it comes to performance, damage, everything. And not just behind Aldrachi, but honestly, behind most other damage classes. It's just not enough. As it currently stands, Aldrachi is so much better than Felsguard that you would just never play Felsguard in any content. Not Mythic Plus, not Raid, not PvP, nothing. Maybe some roleplay, you could do that. Now, speaking of PvP, let's imagine Aldrachi in PvP. Clearly, all of these damage amps would just immediately decimate any player you're against, which ultimately, as you guessed it, would result in a nerf. This is especially scary to think about because, as many of you know or may not know, Havoc received a nerf in PvP about a month ago over on retail in Dragonflight, and it was a 4% nerf. That nerf was mistakenly applied to PvE as well. The code was put in place to not have it affect PvE, but there's one tiny value that's incorrect and it nullifies the entire thing. So a 4% PvP nerf has kept Havoc at a 4% deficit in PvE, Raids, and Mythic Plus for the past month. Been reported many times by many people, We've even pointed out to them exactly which value is causing the problem, and nothing. So you can understand why there's very little faith that a PvP nerf would only affect PvP and how it could be a bad thing in general for Havoc. Anyway, let's go back to talking about the way Aldrachi Reaver plays. So there's these really awkward moments that happen where you get Reaver's Glaive, you Blade Dance first and then Chaos Strike to get the 30% Reaver's mark. Okay, cool. That's your main goal, right? Keep that debuff up on the mob. That's it, especially in single target. So you're going about your rotation, you're pressing your buttons, you're slamming your death sweep procs from your tier set. Whenever you get them, you're spamming Chaos Strike to get soul fragments. And hey, look at that, you got lucky and you got 6 back and you're able to use Reaver's Glaive again. So you see the button light up and you press it because whack-a-mole, right? Or maybe you accidentally pressed it because you were spamming Throw Glaive. Remember from earlier? And to your surprise, Death Sweep is on cooldown and you can't press it. So you have 2 options at this point. You can just go ahead and press Chaos Strike instead, but if you do that, it will overwrite your 30% damage increase debuff with a 15% one. Or the other option is you stand there and press nothing while you wait for Death Sweep to be ready so you can lead with that into another Chaos Strike and refresh the 30% damage buff. So let me show you what that might look like. So we open with the Hunt to get Reaver's Glaive, right? We're gonna, let's just say we I-beam, we're gonna Reaver's Glaive, Death Sweep into Annihilation, and there we go. We got the buff, 30% debuff on the mob. We're going to generate some soul fragments. There we go. We got Reaver's Glaive, and look at that. Death Sweep is on cooldown. We press it. We can't use Death Sweep, so we're forced to either do nothing or wait for it to come off cooldown to then press Chaos Strike to refresh. We could have pressed Chaos Strike while we waited for Death Sweep, but that would have refreshed or overwritten our 30% debuff with a 15% one. Now, another thing I have to mention is something really annoying that's happening over on the beta, and I'm honestly terrified that it might creep into live servers. So for some reason, we can now see other demon hunters' soul fragments spawn. So you see them like float up in the air a bit and then disappear before they land on the ground. This is honestly just insanely confusing, especially when playing Aldrachi and trying to keep up with your soul fragments and keep track of them. You'll see these fragments spawn and you think that they're yours. So you run over to that general area and there's nothing. And this doesn't just happen with other Havocs. It will happen if there's like a Vengeance tank near you, not even in your group. They don't even have to be grouped with you. It can be outdoor content and there's a Vengeance. You will see his soul fragments spawn and you'll think that they're yours. And you'll be very confused / disappointed when you realize they're not yours. So what needs to happen here? Well, I do think that the stacking damage amps from Aldrachi Reaver need to be toned down. I think Reaver's Mark is problematic. Reaver's Mark is setting us up to play some very odd and awkward builds. So for example, I could see a situation where instead of playing something like this in raid, we might play something like this for single target. And as you can see, here we're taking Cycle of Hatred, we're taking Shattered Destiny, we're not even taking Essence Break. This is purely a keep Reaver's Mark on the target build. You'd be like, you know, using your stuff to keep up Reaver's Glaive, get as many soul fragments as you can, and we're keeping up the debuff on the target. What does this remind you of? What does this remind you guys of? Is there a certain, maybe, Covenant ability that it's reminiscent of? If you think back to like a red ability, a red debuff you would keep on the target. I don't know. Is it ringing any bells? So I think the 30% of Reaver's Mark stacking with the 30% of Thrill of the Fight on top of all this other stuff is just insanely problematic, and it's going to result in Aldrachi Reaver just always being incredibly good. As the expansion goes on, as we get more stats, it's going to get worse and worse. Technically better and better in terms of damage output, but playstyle wise, worse and worse. If you're playing this single target build, it's going to scale insanely well with haste. It's going to be ugly. It's going to be ugly. And ultimately, the better that Aldrachi Reaver is, the worse Fellscarred is going to be. So I think they need to take another look at the stacking modifiers of Aldrachi Reaver. I do think they have to go back to Fellscarred, and I'm sure they have some more ideas in the vault. I'm not talking like a complete revamp of Fellscarred, but there's got to be some ideas to make it just do more damage or do a couple other things. They don't need to scrap the whole thing, just adjust it a little bit. And I do think that maybe this is on the way, because we haven't seen any Fellsguard changes in quite a while. The past few builds have been basically all Aldrachi Reaver, so fingers crossed that we might see some more Fellsguard stuff coming up. I'm fearful of Havoc Demon Hunter right now because Aldrachi Reaver is horrible to play. Most of you are going to hate it. I can tell you right now. I know you guys. I've been talking to you for years. I know what you like. I know what you don't like. You're not going to like it. Trust me. So if you like this video, give it a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We're getting close to that 30K mark, trying to get 30K before the War Within launches. I appreciate your support. All right, thanks for watching. Catch you next time. Peace.